and as we also stand up on the tallest mountain and tell the world, abuse and exploitation of Africa has got to come into an end. The revolution for Africa's liberation has arrived, and those who don't jump on the bandwagon, your days are numbered in Africa. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful people, viewers and subscribers. Let me bring you up to speed with what is happening in Niger Republic. Following the coup that happened there, there had been this, kind of alliance, not kind of alliance, full-fledged alliance between some of these countries, former French colonies. Talking about Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, coming in an alliance, having a military pact to defend themselves against ECOWAS.
The military leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger have signed a mutual defense pact that binds the signatories to assist one another, including militarily, in the event of an attack on any one of them. Ministerial delegations from the three Sahel countries announced this in Mali's capital, Bamako, on Saturday. The contracted parties undertake to combat all forms of terrorism and organized crime in the common area of the alliance. Called the Liptako-Guma Charter, the pact establishes the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. The Liptako-Guma region, where the Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger borders meet, has been ravaged by jihadism in recent years. Of course, everything starts with security, but the heads of state must also think about economic issues, how to bring the different countries closer together, and how to facilitate trade between our different populations. All these issues will be added to the charter in the coming days. All three countries have undergone coups since 2020, most recently Niger. West African bloc ECOWAS threatened to intervene militarily, but Mali and Burkina Faso quickly responded by offering their military support to Niger.
Now I must tell you that is to show that these people are willing to defend their land against France, who wants to invade them in the name or in the guise of ECOWAS. Now think of it. Why is ECOWAS so particular about Niger? That is where they are doing their biggest cash out. That is why they are so determined to capture back Niger Republic. So I want you to see this as a way of people standing up to liberate themselves once and for all. And I must tell you that this woman had been the voice for Africa.
First and foremost, I am an African.
And it does appear that sometimes what people do intend for bad turns out to work out for good. You were relieved of your AU permanent representative job because powers that be were uncomfortable with your stance on neocolonization, especially with the overbearing influence of France on states it once colonized. But it appears that no one saw the outrage that would greet that, and even how much more popular your gospel was going to get. Did you envisage all of this at all since 2019?
Not at all. Even during my tenure, I was simply delivering on my mandate. As a medical doctor, I went to Washington, of course, reluctantly. But of course, once a doctor, always a doctor. I started making diagnosis while I was in Washington. And my diagnosis, first and foremost, became the ignorance that we had of our understanding of Africa, not only as Africans, not as Black people around the world, but even members of Congress themselves, the US government, they really don't understand Africa. So I set out to address the issue of the ignorance about what was going on in Africa, educating the African diaspora primarily, and secondarily, those in the US government and anybody else that wished to listen to the message. Because I felt that that was the root cause of what was going on in Africa, the lack of understanding and appreciation of what was really going on in Africa, and more importantly, identifying the root causes. And for Africa, I came to the conclusion that France was the biggest risk to peace and security and overall African development, particularly in West Africa, because of one particular agreement that they would make the African heads of state sign when they were receiving their independence. It was a horrible, continues to be a horrible document that sadly it has been allowed to continue to this very day, to the serious detriment of the Africans. So I set out to educate the Africans about France. Others would say, why didn't you talk about the British and all other colonizers? Yes, we would speak about them as well. But the one that is leading the pack, the one that is taking the crown of the abuse and exploitation, it is France. And I felt very strongly that if France can come to the table and also renegotiate those contracts, if France can leave Africa, that would be the beginning of true liberation. And I'm talking economic liberation of the African continent. So France is leading the pack because of its deep roots within Africa, because of the agreements that the heads of states were made to sign during independence of Africa. The legacy of colonization remains to be a serious issue for the African. It is the legacy of colonization that makes it difficult for us as a people to push back. The legacy of slavery, the legacy of colonization left the African feeling inferior, feeling they're incapable, admiring everything else that somebody else is doing, that everything African is undesirable, that we're always looking to what those who don't look like us are doing, and we want to emulate what they are doing. Mm-hmm. That, to me, the biggest risk to Africa's development is the mind. We have now put a system in place where if we do not wake up to the reality, we are going to be handing Africa back to the colonizers, this time on a silver platter. Who has the funds to build the transcontinental highway? It's not us, Black people. Who has the funds and the capacity to bring about the development, to build the ports, to build the infrastructure that is required? It is not us. So who are the companies that are getting the contracts to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area? They're Chinese companies. They're Middle Eastern companies. They're European companies. They're Indian companies. It's everybody else except us. I have not seen a push to promote Africans coming together as a continent. I've not seen a push to line up the opportunities and say 60% of these must be occupied, must be run. These contracts must be given to Africans, must be given to Black people. I've not seen that document that's demanding that X amount must stay with the people. That is where I see the problem going to be. If we do not manage the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we are going to be handing Africa back to the colonizers, this time on a silver platter. That is my fear, and I hope it does not come to fruition. We need to make sure that we speak very strongly to it. We need a document that says, at a minimum, 60% of all the contracts must go to the Africans. And then we set out a plan to make sure that the Africans are educated and informed about the process of getting these contracts. We must also be very clear about how to mobilize the funding so Africa can be built by the Africans for the Africans. We do not mind foreign direct investment. We do not mind our friends coming to help us, but Chinese do not look to outsiders to build China. Europeans do not look to outsiders to build Europe. No one else looks outside their region to build their regions. Why do we Africans, why must we always look outside? But also, the Secretary General for the African Continental Free Trade Area must go the extra mile to educate and inform the Africans, and also open doors for those opportunities for Africans to build the Africa that they want through the African Continental Free Trade Area. If that is not done, colonization 202 is around the corner.
So what would you then make of this summit, which is just concluded in South Africa, the BRICS summit, which is rounding up now? They say that their bank is going to be, that's the bank's international, the New Development Bank, which is the name of the bank owned by the BRICS nation, will now be lending out at least 30% of its loans, giving it out in local currency. Do you think this is a good development?
I think it's a very good development, but again, it has to be managed. My understanding of that development bank is that the funds will be given to the country, and then their job is to follow behind and monitor the process and the manner in which the funds are being used. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I was actually able to meet with their one of the directors for that bank, very jacked up lady who understands Africa well. So I think if we do our part as Africans, that's actually a very good thing. But we must also do our part. The problem with us Africans is always implementation on the ground. So it's about education. It's about really coming up with a special focus and talking to the people. Let them get a buy-in from the people. Because once people have a buy-in, it's easier for them to move forward. But if the monies are just flooded into the country without the buy-in from the people, without really letting them know, not only from their own little community point of view, but they must look at it and say, what I'm doing is not only for my community, but it's for my country, it's for my SADC region, and it's for my continent. Let people feel proud of what is going on. Let them understand that what I'm doing right now is actually a fight against the Chinese. It's a fight against the Europeans. So when we go to the world stage, we can stand up together as Africans and say, look what we have done. Just to the extent that the Chinese are proud of having built the China that they built. We too must have that spirit. So that spirit must be cultivated from a village level, from the country level, from sub-regional level, and ultimately to the continental level. So as the funds are being pushed into Africa, are we educating our people? Are we making our people feel proud of what they're doing and the effects of what they're doing, how it percolates to a better Africa, which is what we want? So yes, the bank is a good thing. It's a good starting point, and we can actually use it to benefit our participation, and by our, I mean us Africans, our participation in the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Great outcome, but it must be nurtured.
Well, you've been doing a real yeoman's job in the diaspora. Do you ever hope to come back to Africa someday and maybe run for office? Just joking. I mean, I'm just asking. Has it ever in mind?
I am not going to run for any office. The only office I would consider running is the chairman of the African Union Commission. That's it. Because I do feel that there is a need for a voice there. Right now, there is no voice. African Union is like a dead entity, and something needs to happen there. African Union is one entity that could speak on behalf of the continent, that could speak and call out those who are abusing Africa. It is the one place that we could actually let the world know that the exploitation and abuse of the African continent has got to come to an end. That voice is not there. That is the only place that I think I can make a difference. Besides that, no. I'm already in Africa, by the way. I spend half of my time in Africa now. I travel quite a bit, and I intend to continue to do so. And as we also stand up on the tallest mountain and tell the world, abuse and exploitation of Africa has got to come into an end. The revolution for Africa's liberation has arrived, and those who don't jump on the bandwagon, your days are numbered in Africa. Thank you.
She said it the way it is. Enough of France in Africa. Enough of Western domination in Africa. And they kicked her out because of what she represents, because she stood by the truth. You know, these guys, especially from the AU, African Union, whatever they call themselves, to many of these political leaders in Africa are all stooges of the West. That's why people like this are not allowed around corridors of power or in the limelight, so that they'll keep us in darkness, so that we'll keep wallowing in abject poverty and in misery. So help me share this video if you believe in the liberation of Africa. Bye-bye for now. Drop a comment on the comment section and subscribe for more videos.